So we're starting off with law of cosines. And with law of cosines, it's the brother of law of sines. So let's recap what law of sines is. So law of sines. What is law of sines? No. Huh? Law of sines is the ratio. Sine of A over side A equals sine of angle B over side B, which equals sine of angle C over side C. You remember those? Okay, this is law of sines. Law of sines only works if you're provided angle, angle, side, angle, side, angle, and side, side, angle. The thing with side, side, angle, I know we didn't go in depth with this, but it's called an ambiguous case. Okay? Now, what these mean, I don't know if you recall from geometry, but what it's saying is that when you look at a triangle, either going clockwise or counterclockwise, that's the information you're provided, right? So if I look at this triangle and they gave me A, and they gave me C, and they gave me B, that would be an angle, side, angle. If they gave me C and angle B and side A, side, angle, side. Okay? Now, law of sine does not work with side, angle, side, or side, side, side. What works with it is law of cosine. So when you're provided that information, you're going to use law of cosines. These are the formulas for law of cosine. Okay? It's just a continuation of trig. Okay? So for a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times cosine of a. That means I'm given enough information to fill in every variable but 1. Okay, same thing here. I'm given enough information to fill in every variable but 1. Okay, mainly you use this when it's a side, angle, side problem. There is no Pythagorean involved. Law of cosines, yes. So when I make my, if I was you, when I make my formula chart for my test, would this be one of them on it? Yes, it would. All right. So we're ready. Number 1. So on number 1, what information is provided to me? I'm provided side, angle, side. Because I'm provided side, angle, side, that means I can't use law of sine, so I have to use law of cosines. So I label what I have. Remember, across from the angles are its corresponding sides. So this would be B, and this would be C. So I know that angle A equals 27. I know that side B equals 17, and side C equals 13. Knowing those 3 variables, which equation would I use? Which formula would I use? Knowing those 3 variables alone.
The first one.
The first one. Because I can use the first one, I'll fill in every variable but A, right? I'll fill in everything but A. If I use the second one, I wouldn't know A, and A's in 2 places. That wouldn't be fun to deal with. Okay? Now you substitute. Substitute means that if I know what they're equal to, then I just plug them in, right? So I'm going to substitute the values. So where B squared is, I'm going to write. Where C squared is, I'm going to write. Where just B is, I'm going to write. And where C is, I'm just going to write. Alright? And then cosine of A is 27 degrees. Okay? At this point, you just put it in the calculator. So I'm going to go to my calculator. Make sure I have a calculator page open. And I'm going to put in 17 squared plus 13 squared minus 2 times 17 times 13 times the cosine of 27. And I hit enter. And what do I get?
64.
We're going to, What I need to emphasize on is mathematically, to be correct, when it's a side, you round to the nearest hundredth. When it's a degree, you round to the nearest tenth. Because we're talking about a side, we want to try to round to the nearest hundredth. So this would be 64.18. All right. So I have that in there. Well, is A still by itself? How do I get it by itself? Square root. Okay. What I want you guys to practice is square rooting exact values. So when I go to the calculator, I'm going to write control squared to get my square root. And I'm going to arrow up and hit enter so that it can put the exact value in there for me. Arrow up and hit enter. And I get what? 8.01. So 8 and 100ths because we are rounding to the nearest hundredths. So A is... Alright, so I know what A is. Now, do I have enough information to find angle B and angle C?
What, number 2?
No, for number 1. If this problem was to extend, could I find angle B and angle C?
Because you have angle A and sine.
Exactly. Now that leads me back to law of sine.
So basically, you just do cosines to get to law.
To get enough information in order to do law of sine. So now I have enough information where if I need to find angle B, I would set up my ratio with sine of...
So it'd be sine over 27 over 8.01 equals sine of... We were trying to find B, sine of B over 17.
Yes. You only need to do law of sine once, because once I know 2 angles, how do I find the third angle?
You subtract from 180.
I'm going to subtract from 180, right? All right, what do I do here?
B equals 17 sine over 27.
I'm going to end up cross multiplying and dividing. When I cross multiply and divide, I end up with sine of B equals 17 sine of
27
over...
8. Yeah.
Well, what's the problem there? It's B by itself technically. So what do I have to do?
You have to inverse
What I do to one side to cancel out, I have to do to the...
other.
So in the calculator, I'm going to put inverse of all of that mumbo jumbo in there. So I'm going to go to the calculator, trig, inverse of sine, control divide. 17 sine of 27. Okay, at this point, guys, if you wanted to get the exact value for 8, what you actually hit is control negative. Control negative, and it puts the previous answer in the problem. Does that make sense? And when I hit enter, it'll substitute it in. See it? Alright, so what's the angle measure for B?
74.45.
Remember, it's an angle, so...
Oh, 74.5.
Alright, so we have B. How do we find C?
You subtract from 180.
There you go.
Are there going to be questions like that on the test?
Yes, ma'am. You arrow up and hit enter.
That's 79.
It's an angle, so 78.5.
It's an angle, so you don't really extend.
So do we know everything about this triangle?
Yeah.
Yes, I know everything about this triangle. So if I need to find the area or the perimeter, could I do so?
Yes.
Yes, I have enough information to do that. And I can find the area actually in 3 different ways, right?
There's another formula.
Because there's other formula. Other formula we're going to go over to make sure you guys know to put on your note card is when it's not a right triangle or the height is not provided, as long as you know the sides and the angles, you can use this formula. Remember, these are the area formulas. There are no area formulas with cosine. I've been asked that all day. Okay? The reason why I put this one up here is because I want to show you that right here, notice how on part 2, on problem 2, I could find the area all the way, right? Because I'm given a side, an angle, and a side. So I look at what I'm given. Well, I have C and I have A. So which formula would I use?
The last one. No, wait.
You would use
The middle one, right? Because I know what A is, I know what C is, and I know what angle B is. So I would just plug the values in and put in the calculator, and I would know the area before I found the rest of the information, right? So as long as you're provided side, angle, side, you can find the area automatically.
So we couldn't get the first?
Huh?
We couldn't get the last one,
I'm not understanding what you're saying.
like on the note card, looking at the BC, so you couldn't get it.
No, because do we know what A is?
Oh, you know the second one? I thought you
Yeah, I used the second one because we already saw the first one. But we're about to go into the second one. Do y'all get what I'm saying though? So before starting it, check and see what information you have. You know, before solving for every piece of information, if it just wants to know one aspect of it, check and see if you have enough information to just find that one aspect. Does that make sense? So don't give yourself more work if you don't have to. Okay? And I think that's what happens when I make your test and then I take the test and it takes me a short amount, like an extreme short amount of time, is because I recognize the patterns and I recognize the shortcuts. You guys are not looking for that. You're just looking for a constant routine. Okay? Sometimes it's good to recognize a pattern and recognize what you're given. Alright? This will be on your review page that you get tomorrow, just in case you. And it should also be in your notes from last week. Alright, I want you guys to try 2, and if you struggle, please just raise your hand, and I will come to you. Alright, so we plugged in 105 squared, 68 squared, 105, 68, 48. Put in the calculator and you got 6,093. Is it 81 hundredths? Take the square root. Take the square root.
78.06.
Okay? So that means side B is.
78.06.
So in order to solve for angle A or angle C, I would set up a
sine.
sine.
Sine 48 over 78.06.
Good job.
What do you mean the difference? Put 78.1.
It equals sine of
No, it shouldn't be that big of a difference. But remember, it's a side, so you round to the nearest hundred.
Equals sine of C over 68. At least that's what I did.
I put
I think I did A.
I did A too.
I
You
did
already got
C,
C.
Rich.
I did C too. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what order you go in.
So
All right. So A equals sine inverse of 105 sine of 48,
divided by
78.06. And you put in the calculator, you got what?
88.34.
And what did y'all get for C?
That's not what I got.
See, I got 43.6.
I got 48.34 whenever I did C.
Yeah, I got 34. That's what I got.
Okay.
Can we do it the other way?
You guys did it with C?
Yeah, we do it C.
So sine inverse, and with C, it would be 68.
Sine, yeah, 68
sine
sine
of
48 over 78.06.
Oh, you don't have to put sign in there?
Huh?
Yeah, there's the sine.
78.06.
The sign is on the outside.
78.06 right
I'm saying 'cause
See, that's what we got.
there. Yeah,
Oh, that's what I did.
Where you get 68 from?
that's what I got.
Oh, because I did sine of C,
And
right?
then whenever I subtracted, I got 91.66
Where's the gate come from?
See?
for A.
Oh, I did.
180 minus 48.
I did it the easy way.
Yeah, hey,
I did everything that was
The
all
hard way.
Is
See,
it?
it's 91.66.
I did sign.
See?
Yeah, that's what I got.
And you got 91.7 degrees.
could you explain this?
That's exactly
Yeah.
what you have up there.
Hold on, so
I don't see where y'all would have messed up or anything.
91.7, right?
Well, I don't know how. So did we mess up on C?
No.
Or is A
Or is
messed
it
up?
A must go? See?
No. Okay. What this comes down to that this could be an ambiguous case.
It is an ambiguous.
It's an ambiguous case. And what that means is that there's actually 2 correct answers.
So on the test.
No, your test is multiple choice.
Oh, okay.
So if it
If it's
shows,
wrong one way, then just do it the
yes,
other.
So we just do it the other
yes, this is an ambiguous case.
oh, that's
So
No,
what
yeah, I
they,
even had ambiguous, so
Yes, it's
So what they did
ambiguous.
was, instead of us
So
doing
either
sign of
way
A,
is
they
right.
put sign of C first.
Yes, and both answers are correct. I think that's why I made this test a multiple choice, because to eliminate the error of ambiguous case. That's what I think. Okay, so A could have either been what? What's the other A option? 91 point something. What was it?
Then you'll get, for A, you'll get 91.7, and for C, you'll get
So what's right?
Both. With ambiguous cases, there are two options.
Yeah, I forgot the inverse. We gotta use the inverse for angle.
That's why he kept getting that decimal. I was like, what is that? All right, so that was an ambiguous case. There are two answers. Answer A could be either 88.4 or A could be 43.6, or I'm sorry, 88.4 or 91.7, and C could either be 43.6 or C could be 40.3.
Okay.
Got it? All right, now we're down to this. So at 3, we're not solving for a side anymore. What are we solving for? An angle, because it tells us all of our sides, but it tells us nothing about our angles. So when we're missing an angle, what does it tell us we're going to end up using? Cos inverse. Okay? So to find your final answer, you're going to have to use the cos inverse. Capiche? Who told me? Hold on.
So they tell you what you need right there. So when you substitute, maybe 5 squared equals 6 squared. Hold on, no.
This is A.
Yeah, 6 squared.
There we go.
6 squared equals 5 squared.
Equals 5 squared plus 7 squared minus 5.
So I can't put this all in the calculator because notice this is tagging along, right?
Yeah.
So I only can do parts in the calculator. So I could do 6 squared and I would get, I could do 5 squared plus 7 squared and I get what?
You can use 25 plus 42.
49 is
49, you know,
74.
74.
Then I can do this part. What's negative 2 times 5 times 7?
Negative 70.
And the negative is already there for me, right? Okay, so notice here at this point now, cosine, I need to get it by itself. If I'm adding a positive 74 to move it, I'm going to have to do what? Subtract. So I'm going to end up with 36 minus 74. So that one's gone. Well, I'm still left with negative 70 times cosine of A. What's the opposite of multiply? So divide by negative 70. So now this is by itself, but is A by itself yet?
No.
So what would I have to do?
Inverse.
Inverse. So I would have to do the inverse. What I do to one side, I have to do to the. So it comes down to 36 minus 74 divided by negative 70. And I just have to do what?
Put it in the calculator.
You guys tell me what A is.
what makes you cross off the 74?
What makes me, because I subtracted it to move it to the other side. I made it its opposite.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it's positive here, so to move it to the other side, I have to make it a negative.
Uh-oh.
What is it?
It's at 50.
Is it 57.1?
Because it's a
It's an
degree.
angle.
How was that?
Negative 70, right?
Mm-hmm.
It don't let you do it. It
It lets me do it.
Okay? So in your calculator, you're going to do
cosine of negative 1.
trig, cosine inverse, 36 minus 74 divided by negative, and I get
Oh, okay. I thought I did it wrong for a second.
It's a degree, so I round to the nearest 10. So 57 1/10 of a degree. Alright, now I want you to practice 4. Alright, so here I plug in what I know. This is C, A, B. I'm looking for angle C, so I'm going to plug in. So I have 43 squared equals 50 squared plus 38 squared minus 2 times 50 times 38. And remember, my goal is to get C by itself. I evaluate where I can. This becomes 1849. This becomes 3,944. And this becomes 3,800. I want to get cosine of C by itself.
How you get 3,800?
Negative 2 times 50 times 38. Remember, we can't put it all in the calculator. We only can put parts at a time.
Is it negative?
Yes, but they already put the negative there for us.
Oh, okay. I thought I was wrong.
Okay? Now to move 3944, I'm going to have to.
Subtract it.
And divided by that.
So now it's gone.
Divided by 3. Yeah, because it's a negative 2.
And then I'm going to divide by negative 38. Well, is C by itself?
No, divide by 4.
What I do to one side, I have to do to the. So 1849 minus.
Divided by 3. You get 56.5.
You got like x equals such and such, but if you want to put that other number to x, you gotta wait a minute.
So we divided from the cosine to get it.
Yes.
You know, like a squared plus b squared is c squared, and a squared plus b squared equals c.
56.5.
56.5. So C would be.
Inverse cosine.
Okay? Alright. So, did anyone recognize the pattern?
Yes.
So what am I doing every time? In order to get the angle by itself, did anyone recognize what I'm doing? I'm inversing, but I'm also subtracting something, right? So when I look at A, notice how to find angle A, I knew I was going to have to do the inverse, right? Because I'm looking for a angle. And then I have A squared over here. Well, with A squared, I subtracted B squared and I subtracted C squared, right? Because they were combined and I subtracted them together. Then I divided by negative 2 times B times C, correct? Mm-hmm. So if I do this every time when I'm given side A, side B, and side C, will I always find angle A? Every single time. And the rule still applies. Now, if that works for A, what would be the rule for B? Okay? B squared minus A squared minus C squared
equals negative 2A of C
divided by
negative 2 times A times C.
there you go.
You always do this to us.
What?
An easier way.
You have to go through the trials to appreciate it.
I like the long way better. You know,
Okay? What would I do to find C?
I was understanding why.
cosine
Cosine
negative 1
equals C squared minus
A squared minus B squared
Sorry. That's an A.
over negative 2 AB cosine.
negative 2B AB.
Oh, yeah, well.
Okay? These only work when you have side, side, side.
Let me write that down.
This is an A. That's an A. This way? Good?
You're subtracting 3,944 from the 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
I understand this, but on the test, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I have a feeling I'm nervous.
Don't do that. Don't say that. All right, I want us to practice number 6 using the shortcut formula. And then the rest is for you to practice. Do not practice page 3. We're going to do page 3 tomorrow, okay? So let's look at number 6. Notice how is anything numbered? But can I number and can I label? I just go clockwise. You don't have to, but I do.
So you just trying to find your angle.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm trying to find the angle, and it's a side problem, right? So I'm finding angle B, so looking at the shortcut formula, which one am I using?
Cosine of -1.
Cosine inverse. B squared minus A squared minus C squared over. And I just have to do what? Plug in what I know. What's B squared? 9 squared minus 11 squared minus 16.7 squared over is it 11?
Divided by -2.
And what do I get? Oh, still waiting? What'd you say? I get 29.8 degrees. Is that so? What's that?
29.7. 29.8.
Good job.
Well, I got
21.8.
Okay, let's practice plugging into the calculator. So we go to the calculator. We're going to hit trig, inverse, control, divide. I have 9 squared minus 11 squared.
Are we doing -2 or?
It's a -2. Minus 16.7 squared divided by -2 times 11 times and what do I get? 29.8.
Oh.
And guess what, guys? You also can use this formula to solve for the other angles without having to do law of sines.
You didn't put the 9? That's B, ain't it?
No, but the formula doesn't call for B in the denominator. It only calls for A and C in the denominator.
I got 89.
Oh, A, C.
Okay? So let's take a gander. If I wanted to solve for angle A and I want to use the same thing, what would be my formula now?
A squared plus, minus B squared.
So A would equal cosine inverse of,
A squared minus B squared minus C squared divided by -2BC.
and I could solve for angle A without having to do law of sines. Pretty easy, right? So I plug all that in the calculator. So I go to my calculator. I do trig, cosine inverse, control, divide. Now I'm going to start off with B squared, which is, A squared, which is 11, minus B squared, minus C squared. Yes. And then times 9 times, and I hit enter and I get 37.4 degrees. Huh? I did A. I said if I wanted to solve for A, I don't now have other options, right? I don't always have to use law of sines. I can now just stick to the law of cosines and plug in the information. And then angle C, I would just do what? I didn't want to do that color. it would just equal 180 minus this one minus this one. So angle C is, there you go. And now I have all the angles, I have all the sides. Could I solve for any other information now? Area or perimeter, and I'll be set. So law of cosine, you can use it the entire way through, or if you're more comfortable with cross multiplying and dividing, you can switch to law of.
And then the other one is just like word problems.
But yeah, we're gonna do the word problems tomorrow. So tonight, guys, I would like for y'all to practice 5, 7, 8. If you when you practice them, if you look online, the answers will be there. So here's the answers to 5, 7, and 8. They'll be posted, hopefully recorded. Fingers crossed, guys.
I'll be here at 12.
Okay, I have a